Snow fell like broken glass from the sky, sharp and endless. The human pulled his torn jacket tighter around his body, but the cold still bit through his skin. His boots sank into the deep white ground, every step heavier than the last. He could feel the ice crawling into his bones. His breath came out in clouds that froze almost as soon as they left his mouth. He had been walking for hours, maybe days. He had lost count. Food was gone. Water was ice in his pack, and the only thing keeping him moving was the thought that if he stopped, the cold would bury him alive. The world around him was silent, too silent. No birds, no insects, not even the crack of ice. Just the sound of his own boots crushing snow. It was like walking in a graveyard made of ice and shadows. His fingers had lost all feeling. His face was stiff. He knew it would not be long before his body gave up. Then, in the distance, he saw something. At first, he thought it was another snow-covered rock. But it moved. It twitched. His tired eyes blinked hard, trying to make sense of it. Slowly, he forced himself to walk closer. His boots dragged. His body screamed for rest, but he kept going. When he reached the shape, his heart froze harder than the snow around him. It was not a rock. It was a person, or at least something that looked like one. Long limbs, strange markings on the skin, hair tangled with ice. She was lying in the snow, almost buried. She wasn't human. Her ears were sharper, her skin a faint silver blue that shimmered against the white ground. Her lips were cracked, her eyes half closed, and her body shook weakly. She was alive, but barely. The human's first thought was to turn away. This was dangerous. She was alien, and he was human. They were not friends, not allies. For all he knew, she could kill him if she gained strength. But his second thought struck harder. If he left her, he would also die. Two bodies freeze slower than one. That was a rule of survival he had learned long ago. He knelt beside her, shaking her shoulder. "Hey, can you hear me?" His voice was dry, cracked from the cold. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the snowlight. She stared at him, confused, then narrowed her gaze like a cornered animal. Her lips moved, slow, stiff, and then she spoke, her voice broken but sharp. "Human, shut up! Get in my bed! Now, we're freezing!" The words struck him like a blade. For a moment he thought he had misheard. But no, her voice was clear even in her weakness. She wasn't asking, she was ordering. He looked around, confused. Bed? What bed? Then he noticed the shadow of a broken shelter nearby, half covered with ice. A piece of metal, maybe part of an old wreck, formed a sort of roof. A thin layer of fur and cloth was inside, enough to call it a bed in this frozen wasteland. He hesitated. Everything inside him screamed not to trust her. She was alien. She could be a trap. Maybe she was pretending weakness to lure him close. Maybe she would slit his throat the moment he lay down. But the wind cut through him like knives. His legs shook. His chest burned from the cold. He knew he had no choice. Either he took her command seriously, or he would never see the next sunrise. The girl reached out weakly, grabbing his arm. Her fingers were freezing, but her grip was strong. "Do it," she hissed, her voice rough with anger and desperation. "Or we both die." The human's heart pounded. He looked into her eyes, saw not just hatred, but fear. She didn't want him. She needed him. With a heavy breath, he dragged her body toward the shelter. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in his arms. Her head fell against his chest, and he could feel how cold she was, colder than the snow itself. He pushed inside the broken shelter, laying her down on the bed of fur and cloth. The wind outside howled, making the metal roof groan. He slid in beside her, stiff and uncertain. Their bodies touched, and the warmth, or what little they had left, began to spread. The alien girl shivered violently, her lips close to his ear. "Closer," she whispered harshly, almost like a threat. "Don't think. Just stay." His hands trembled as he pulled the fur over them. Her body pressed against his, her skin strange but soft, and for the first time in hours, he felt a spark of heat. Minutes passed like hours. Neither spoke. He listened to her breathing, slow but steady now. His mind screamed with questions. Who was she? Why was she here? Why was she exiled, left to die in this frozen land? But he dared not ask, not yet. The cold was their enemy now, not each other. Still, the weight of her words lingered in his mind. "Shut up and get in my bed." It had been an order, not a request, and though he hated himself for it, he had obeyed. The snowstorm outside grew louder, covering the world in white death. Inside the broken shelter, two enemies lay together, holding on to the one thing that could keep them alive, each other. The human closed his eyes, but his hand stayed near the knife at his side. He didn't trust her. Not yet. But for now, trust didn't matter. Survival did. And as the storm howled on, he realized something terrifying. If the cold didn't kill him tonight, she just might. The night was endless, stretching on like a curse. The shelter creaked under the weight of snow piling on its roof, and the wind screamed like a hungry beast outside. The human lay stiff, his body pressed against hers, the strange alien warmth seeping slowly into his frozen skin. He had never been this close to someone not of his kind, and every second felt dangerous. Yet without her, he knew he would be dead already. Her breathing was uneven, sometimes steady, sometimes breaking into harsh gasps. She shivered so much that her whole body trembled against him. Instinct pushed him to wrap an arm around her, not out of affection but survival. At first, she resisted with a low growl, her muscles tightening, but after a while, she relaxed just enough to stop fighting. The silence between them was heavy. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in his ears. He wanted to ask who she was, what had happened to her, why she was here in this frozen land. But he kept quiet. Her earlier words had been sharp enough. Shut up. She was not someone who liked questions. Suddenly, her voice broke the silence. It was low, cracked, but filled with pride even in weakness. Do not think this means I like you. You are just warm, nothing more. He smirked slightly in the dark, though his lips were too cold to form a proper smile. Good, he whispered back, because I don't like you either. For a moment, he thought she might claw him for his boldness. But she only shifted, curling closer into his chest. Her body was still shaking, but less than before. Slowly, the storm outside became their lullaby, its howling wind wrapping them tighter into the cocoon of the broken shelter. Time passed slowly. His eyes grew heavy, but he fought against sleep. He couldn't allow himself to drift off, not with her beside him. She might be weak now, but who knew what she would do once her strength returned? When he thought she had fallen asleep, she suddenly spoke again. You wonder why I am here. Her words came out like a statement, not a question. He didn't answer, but his silence told her everything. I was cast out, she said bitterly, her voice like ice. Thrown into the snow like garbage. My own people wanted me gone. Dead. The human turned his head slightly, looking at her face in the dim light. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly with a silver hue that reflected the weak moonlight creeping through cracks in the roof. There was anger in them, but also pain buried deep inside. Why? He finally asked, his voice quiet, careful. Her jaw tightened. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she hissed. Because I am not like them. Because I carry something they fear, and fear always chooses exile or death. She turned her head away, her hair brushing against his cheek. That is all you need to know. He wanted to press further, but something in her tone warned him not to. He swallowed his curiosity, focusing instead on the faint warmth spreading between their bodies. The storm outside roared louder, making the shelter shake. Snow dust fell from the roof onto their faces. The human cursed under his breath. If the roof collapsed, they would be buried alive. He shifted, placing more of his weight against the flimsy wall to steady it. The alien girl's hand gripped his arm suddenly, her nails sharp even in weakness. Don't move, she whispered fiercely. If you leave, the cold will take me. Her grip surprised him. It wasn't just fear of death. It was something deeper. She needed him, and she hated that fact. He looked at her, their faces only inches apart now. Her breath touched his skin, warm but shaking. For the first time, he noticed the strange scars running along her neck, thin lines like burns. They weren't natural. Someone had done that to her. Your people did this? He asked softly. Her eyes flashed, and for a moment he thought she would strike him. But instead, she looked away, her voice breaking. Yes, my people. She fell silent after that, curling tighter into him, shutting herself away. The human let her be, though questions burned in his mind. Why would anyone exile someone and leave them in this frozen deathland? Why hurt her so badly? His body ached from lying still, but warmth was finally spreading enough to keep the frost away from his heart. The alien girl's breathing grew steadier, softer. Sleep was taking her at last. He stayed awake, watching her in the dim light. Even in weakness, there was something fierce about her, a hidden strength buried under fear and anger. She was dangerous. He knew it in his bones. But she was also fragile in this moment, her life balanced on the edge of his warmth. As the hours passed, his mind wandered. Perhaps she was telling the truth. Perhaps she really had been betrayed. Or perhaps she was lying, waiting for the right time to strike. The thought made his hand tighten around the handle of his knife, even as his arm held her closer for heat. Outside, the storm slowly began to ease. The wind weakened, the snow lessened, and the first signs of dawn began to show through the cracks in the metal roof. Pale light spilled into the shelter, revealing their strange bed of furs and cloth. The alien girl stirred, opening her glowing eyes again. She looked at him for a long moment without speaking. Then, with a sharp whisper, she said, "We lived through this night. But tomorrow, human, do not think you own me. I am no one's." He stared back at her, his face calm but his heart restless. "Good," he said flatly. "I don't want to own anyone. I just want to live." For a moment her lips twitched, as if she almost smiled, but it vanished quickly, replaced by her usual coldness. As the light of morning grew, both knew the night had only been the beginning. The frozen wasteland was still out there, hungry and cruel. Survival had forced them together for one night, but the storm inside her words promised that the real struggle, the real danger, was yet to come. The morning light was weak, barely breaking through the heavy clouds above. The storm had slowed, but the world outside was still white, endless and bitter. Inside the small shelter, the human sat up slowly, brushing snow from his hair and shoulders. His body was sore, but at least he was alive. He looked down at the alien girl beside him. She was awake too, her silver eyes half open, watching him without a word. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence felt like a rope stretched between them, ready to snap. Finally, she broke it with her sharp voice. "Don't stare at me, human. You survived because of me. Remember that." He let out a dry laugh. "Because of you? I remember someone begging for my warmth." Her jaw tightened, and her eyes narrowed like blades. "Not begging. Ordering. Do not mistake me for weak." The human raised his hand slightly, showing no fight. "Fine. Ordering. Either way, we're both alive." He pulled his jacket tighter and stood, looking at the frozen wasteland outside through the cracks. "But we won't last long if we stay here. The storm might come back stronger." Her voice softened a little, though pride still laced her words. "You are right, but we cannot walk far. I am still poisoned." He turned to her quickly. "Poisoned?" She nodded slowly, her hand brushing over the strange scars on her neck. "Exile is not simple among my people. It is not just being thrown away. They cut me, burned me, and left poison in my veins, so I would die slowly, suffering in the snow. But I live." Her eyes glowed faintly with anger. "I refuse to die like they want." The human's stomach twisted. The cruelty of it was more than he expected. He studied her face, searching for lies, but all he saw was truth buried under rage. "Why would they do that? Why throw you out like this?" Her eyes turned away, her voice bitter. "Because I carry something they fear. My blood is different. My strength is not like theirs. Instead of embracing it, they called it a curse, and those who curse the order are either executed or exiled." She pulled the fur tighter around her thin frame. "Execution was too easy for me. Exile was worse. They wanted me to suffer longer." The human leaned back against the wall of the shelter, his breath fogging in the cold air. His mind raced. "So they threw you out here just because you're different?" Her lips curled in disgust. "Not just different, dangerous. To them, I am a threat to their order, their caste, their traditions. A threat cannot be allowed to live among them. So they chose to make me vanish in the snow." The human studied her again. She looked fragile, shaking under the cold, but the fire in her eyes told another story. She wasn't weak. She had survived what should have killed her. There was something inside her, something strong. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She blinked, caught off guard. "Why do you need to know?" "Because I don't want to keep calling you alien girl in my head," he replied. For the first time since they met, her expression softened. It wasn't much, just a small flicker in her eyes. She hesitated before whispering, "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated slowly, as if testing the sound. "I'm Daniel." She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a slight nod, as if agreeing that names made things a little less strange. Outside, the wind carried a faint sound, low, distant, but growing. Daniel froze, his ears straining. It wasn't the storm. It wasn't the wind. It was something else, a sound like growls rolling across the snow. Lyra heard it too. Her eyes widened and her body tensed. "They're coming." "Who?" he asked sharply, his hand already moving to his knife. Not my people, she whispered, her voice tight. The beasts of this land, the cold-blooded hunters, they smell weakness, and they will not stop until they feed. Daniel cursed under his breath and crouched near the crack in the shelter wall, peering out. Shadows moved across the snow, large shapes with long limbs and glowing eyes. There were at least 3, maybe more, circling slowly, their growls rising in the air. We can't fight them, he muttered. Not with you like this. But when he turned back to her, Lyra was already pushing herself up, her face pale but her eyes sharp. We don't have a choice. They won't let us hide. They'll tear this shelter apart. Her hands shook, but she pressed them together, and Daniel noticed faint lines glowing across her skin, like veins of silver fire. For a moment, he forgot the beasts outside. His eyes widened at the strange light. What is that? He asked, pointing at her hands. She pulled them back quickly, hiding the glow under the furs. The reason I was exiled, she said bitterly. This power is forbidden. They call it corruption, but it is mine, and if I must use it to survive, I will. The growls grew louder. Snow crunched as the beasts drew closer. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife, though he knew a blade alone wouldn't be enough. He glanced at Lyra. She was weak, poisoned, but still dangerous. He had a choice. He could run now, try to escape into the wasteland, leave her behind. Or he could stay and fight beside her, trusting power he didn't understand. His heart pounded as the first beast's shadow loomed at the entrance of the shelter, its eyes glowing like fire in the dark. Lyra's voice was cold, steady, even in her pain. Stay with me, human, or die alone. Daniel gritted his teeth, pulling the knife free. He had made his choice. For reasons he couldn't explain, he stayed. The shelter shook as the beast roared, snow falling from the roof. Daniel's hand tightened on his weapon, his eyes locked with Lyra's. For the first time, they weren't enemies. They were survivors, standing on the same line between life and death. And in that frozen wasteland, survival was the only truth that mattered. The growls grew sharper, echoing through the frozen air like thunder. Snow shifted outside as heavy feet crushed the ground. Daniel's hand shook slightly on his knife, but his eyes stayed fixed on the entrance of the shelter. The beasts were close now, close enough to smell the stink of their breath in the cold air. Lyra pushed herself up with effort, her body weak, but her eyes burning with fire. She moved closer to the broken edge of the shelter and whispered, "They will come fast. Don't think. Strike when you see them." Daniel swallowed hard, nodding. His heart was racing, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. He had fought before, but never like this. These weren't soldiers or enemies with weapons. These were monsters, pure hunters, and he was just a man with a blade. The first beast appeared at the entrance. Its body was huge, covered in thick fur with spikes of bone sticking out along its back. Its mouth was wide, full of teeth like frozen daggers. Its glowing eyes locked onto them inside the shelter. A deep, rumbling growl came from its chest. Daniel's instincts screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The beast lunged forward, smashing its head against the broken metal, trying to force its way in. Daniel slashed with his knife, the blade cutting across the creature's muzzle. Dark blood sprayed, and the beast howled in rage, pulling back only for a moment. Another growl sounded to the left. A second beast climbed over the snow, circling to trap them. Daniel's throat went dry. There's more of them. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly again, the silver light crawling over her skin. She raised her hand, her fingers trembling, and with a hiss of breath, she released a burst of energy. It was like lightning made of frost, silent but deadly. The blast hit the second beast in the chest, knocking it back into the snow with a roar. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. He had seen many things in war, but nothing like this. What the hell was that? Her voice was sharp, filled with both pride and anger. The reason I was exiled. Remember it well, human. This power is not for your kind to see. Before he could answer, the first beast charged again, ramming its massive body against the shelter. Metal bent and cracked. Snow rained down on them. Daniel rolled to the side, grabbing a broken piece of metal from the floor. He jammed it forward like a spear, stabbing into the beast's eye. The monster screamed, its howl shaking the ground. The shelter could not take another hit. It groaned, the walls bending under the force. Daniel knew they couldn't stay. "We have to move now," he shouted. Lyra struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on the wall. Her breathing was ragged, but her eyes stayed sharp. "If we leave, they will follow." "Then we make them regret it." Daniel snapped back, pulling her arm around his shoulder. Together, they stumbled out into the snow, their breath white in the freezing air. Outside, the storm had left behind a quiet that was more terrifying than the wind. The beasts circled, their glowing eyes like lanterns in the pale dawn. 3 of them now, their bodies moving low to the ground, ready to strike. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife. His arm ached, his body frozen, but he refused to fall. Beside him, Lyra's hands glowed again, but the light flickered, weak and unsteady. She was running out of strength. One beast lunged at them from the right. Daniel shoved Lyra aside and threw himself forward, slashing upward. His blade cut into the creature's throat. Blood sprayed hot across the snow, and the beast collapsed with a choking roar. But before he could breathe, another slammed into him from behind, knocking him face first into the ground. The weight crushed him. He gasped, trying to push back, but the beast's jaws opened above his head. Its teeth dripped with saliva, ready to end him. Then, light exploded. Lyra's scream cut through the air as she unleashed her power again, this time brighter and deadlier. A beam of silver fire shot into the beast's side, burning through flesh and bone. The creature roared in agony, rolling away, smoke rising from its wound. Daniel staggered to his feet, chest heaving. He looked at her, wide-eyed. "You just saved my life." Her lips curled, not into a smile, but something sharper. "Don't think it means I care. I just refuse to die with you dragging me down." The last beast circled them, growling low. Its eyes were locked on Lyra now, as if it could sense her strange power. Snow crunched under its heavy steps as it prepared to leap. Daniel tightened his grip on the knife again, ready to face it. But before he could move, Lyra stepped forward, her whole body trembling. She raised both hands, the silver glow burning so bright that even the morning light seemed dim. With a scream that carried all her pain and anger, she released the energy. It blasted out like a storm of fire and ice mixed together. The final beast was thrown back, its body twisting before it hit the snow, unmoving. Silence fell. The wasteland was quiet again, except for their ragged breathing. Daniel dropped to his knees, exhausted, his knife falling into the snow. His body shook, not just from the cold, but from the shock of survival. He looked at the dead beasts, then at Lyra, who had collapsed to her knees as well, her strength nearly gone. Her voice was faint, almost a whisper. "This is why they fear me. This is why they hate me, because I can do what they cannot." Daniel stared at her, his mind torn. She had saved his life, but she was also something his people would call dangerous, maybe even a monster. Yet looking at her now, weak and trembling, she didn't look like a monster at all. She looked like someone abandoned, betrayed, and left to suffer. He forced himself to his feet, moving to help her up. She resisted for a moment, pride still burning in her eyes, but her body gave in. She leaned on him, her weight heavy but real. Together, they stood in the blood-stained snow, surrounded by silence. For the first time since they met, Daniel realized something he couldn't ignore. If they were to survive this wasteland, he needed her. And maybe, though she would never admit it, she needed him too. The wind cut across the wasteland like sharp blades, carrying fine snow that stung their skin. Daniel held Lyra close against his side as they stumbled forward, leaving behind the broken shelter and the dead beasts. Every step felt heavier, the cold sinking deeper into his bones. His legs shook, his chest ached, but he forced himself onward. Stopping meant death. Lyra leaned on him, her body weak, her breath shallow. Her eyes still glowed faintly, but the power that had saved them was fading. She whispered in a hoarse voice, "You should leave me. Alone, you move faster. With me, you will freeze." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Not happening. I don't leave people behind." She turned her head slightly, giving him a sharp look despite her weakness. "Humans, always pretending to be noble. My people would never waste their life on another." "Then maybe that's why I'm not like your people," he said simply, dragging her arm tighter around his shoulder. The wasteland stretched endlessly before them, nothing but white ground and black rocks jutting out like broken bones. The sky was gray, heavy with more snow. Daniel searched for any sign of shelter, but there was nothing. Only the cold, only silence. Hours passed. Their breaths grew louder, their bodies slower. Daniel felt his strength slipping, but when he looked at Lyra, barely holding on, he pushed harder. Her voice trembled as she spoke again. "The poison, It spreads faster in the cold. Soon my veins will burn, and I will not walk at all. Daniel's heart sank. He remembered the scars on her neck, the cruel way her people had marked her. There has to be something we can do. Medicine? Herbs? Anything? She shook her head weakly. Not herbs, only a rare root. It grows near the cracks of the ice cliffs, where heat leaks from the ground below. My people used it long ago to fight poison. Without it, I will die. He stopped for a moment, breathing hard, staring at the endless snow. Where are these cliffs? She pointed with a trembling hand toward the distant horizon. Far. Days of walking. Daniel cursed under his breath. Days? They didn't have days. The cold would kill them both before then. But he couldn't just give up. He tightened his grip on her and forced his legs to move again. The journey became a blur. Snow burned his eyes, his lips cracked, his fingers went numb. Sometimes he thought he saw shapes moving in the distance, but they were only shadows of ice. His mind screamed at him to stop, to rest, but his body kept going because hers depended on it. At last, as night began to fall, they reached the edge of a frozen cliff. Steam rose faintly from cracks in the ice, creating strange mist in the air. Lyra's eyes lit up weakly when she saw it. There, the roots, below. Daniel scanned the jagged rocks and the narrow paths leading downward. It was dangerous, slippery, and one wrong step meant falling into darkness. But there was no choice. He helped her sit against a rock, her body trembling with exhaustion. Stay here. I'll get it. Her hand caught his arm, her nails digging into his skin. You don't know what hunts near the cliffs. The beasts were only the beginning. Daniel forced a grin, though his lips were pale. Then I'll make sure they regret hunting me. He pulled his knife tighter against his side and began to climb down. The ice cracked under his boots and sharp rocks tore at his gloves, but he kept moving. Below, faint light shimmered around the roots growing between cracks, glowing softly like embers. He knelt quickly, cutting the root free with his knife. A growl echoed behind him. Daniel spun around, heart pounding. From the shadows of the ice, another creature crawled out. This one was smaller than the beasts before, but faster, its eyes glowing red. It moved low to the ground, claws scraping against the ice. Daniel held the root in one hand and his knife in the other. His breath came out fast, his body already weak, but he refused to back down. When the creature lunged, he slashed hard, the blade cutting into its face. It screeched, rolling back, then came again. The fight was short but brutal. Daniel stabbed with all his strength, popped the knife sinking deep into its chest. Hot blood sprayed across the ice, and the creature collapsed. Daniel staggered, his chest burning from the effort, but he clutched the root tight and began to climb back up. Lyra was waiting, her eyes wide, her body trembling. When he reached her, he dropped beside her, panting hard, placing the glowing root in her hand. Her fingers closed around it, her lips whispering in her language, words he couldn't understand. She crushed the root, the juice spilling into her mouth. She coughed, gagged, then swallowed. Slowly, her breathing steadied, the fire in her veins calming. Color returned faintly to her skin. She leaned back against the rock, her eyes closing for a moment, then opening again. She looked at him, her voice softer than before. You risked your life, for me. Daniel wiped blood from his face, his smile tired but real. I told you, I don't leave people behind. For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes searched his face as if trying to find the truth in his words. Finally, she whispered, You are a fool, human, but a brave one. The night settled around them, quiet except for the hiss of steam rising from the cracks. Daniel leaned back beside her, the root's faint glow lighting their faces. He felt exhaustion pulling him down, but also relief. For the first time since they met, she didn't look at him with pure anger. There was still pride, still fire, but also something else, something almost like respect. As the stars appeared above, Daniel realized their fight was far from over. More dangers waited in this frozen world. But at least for now, they had survived. And survival in this land of death was victory enough. The night was calmer than the ones before. The wind had weakened, and the sky was clearer, showing faint stars above the frozen world. Daniel sat with his back against a rock, his body aching from the fight and the climb, while Lyra rested beside him. The strange glowing root had done its work. Her breathing was stronger now, the shaking in her limbs less. She no longer looked like someone at the edge of death. For a while, there was only silence. Daniel stared at the snow stretching far into the horizon, wondering how much longer they could survive. His mind kept asking the same question. Was he saving her, or was she saving him? Every time he looked at her, he felt both answers were true. Lyra broke the silence first. Her voice was steady, but carried a weight. You wonder why I was really exiled. Daniel turned his head toward her. He didn't speak, only nodded. She looked at her hands, flexing her fingers as faint silver light shimmered under her skin. Among my people, bloodlines decide everything. Caste, power, even the right to live. I was born different. My blood carries something rare. It lets me use power no one else can control. Her voice grew bitter. They saw it as danger. If the other clans learned, it would tear apart the order of the empire. Daniel frowned. So instead of protecting you, they tried to erase you. Her eyes narrowed at the snow, sharp with anger. Yes, they could not risk others knowing. If the humans ever discovered what I carry, war would come. My people fear that more than death. He stayed quiet, his mind heavy with her words. It made sense now. The exile, the scars, the poison. They hadn't just wanted her gone. They had wanted her erased, like she never existed. Lyra's voice lowered, almost a whisper. I am not just one exile. I am a secret. My death was meant to keep balance, but I survived. She looked at him suddenly, her silver eyes piercing. And now you know. Daniel felt a coldness in his chest that had nothing to do with the snow. If others learned what she told him, he would be hunted too. Protecting her meant turning against his own kind, but abandoning her was unthinkable. He met her gaze firmly. I don't care what secret you carry. Right now you're alive, and so am I. That's what matters. Her lips twitched, almost like she wanted to smile, but pride stopped her. Instead, she said, You speak like a fool, but a fool I trust more than my own people. The word surprised him. Trust. It was the first time she had spoken it, even if only half serious. Before he could answer, a sound broke the quiet. It was distant, sharp, and unnatural, not the growl of beasts or the howl of wind. Daniel froze, listening hard. Then he recognized it, footsteps, heavy and organized, moving through snow. Lyra stiffened immediately. Hunters. Daniel's hand went to his knife. Your people? Her expression was grim. Yes, they must have tracked me. They never leave loose threads. Panic flickered in his chest. If her people found them, they would not only kill her, but him as well, for daring to stand at her side. His grip tightened on the blade, though he knew it wouldn't be enough against trained hunters. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly again, but the power in her veins was still weak. She clenched her fists, her voice hard. If they see me alive, they will finish what exile began. They will not stop. Daniel looked at her, then at the snowy field stretching ahead. Running seemed impossible. The hunters would find their trail easily. Fighting seemed worse. But he could not let them take her. Not after everything. The footsteps grew closer. Voices followed, low, harsh, speaking in a tongue Daniel didn't understand. Shadows appeared through the mist, tall figures with spears and glowing armor. Their eyes swept the snow like predators searching for prey. Daniel pulled Lyra down behind the rocks, his heart thundering in his chest. She leaned close, whispering, You should leave now. If they find you with me, you will die too. He shook his head firmly. I already told you. I don't leave people behind. Her eyes softened, but only for a second before she masked it again with steel. Then prepare yourself. They will not give us mercy. The hunters moved nearer, their boots crunching the snow. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife, his mind racing for a plan. He had fought beasts with teeth and claws, but this was different. These were her own people. Trained killers, armed and ruthless. Lyra pressed her hand to the ground, closing her eyes. The faint glow spread again across her skin, but weaker than before. I will draw on what little power I have left. But if I use too much, it may kill me. Daniel grabbed her wrist, shaking his head. No, you're not dying here. Her eyes snapped open, sharp and determined. Then fight with me. If we stand together, we might survive. If not. Her voice trailed off, but the meaning was clear. The hunters' shadows loomed closer, their armor clinking, their breath fogging in the cold air. Daniel's heart pounded, but his fear slowly hardened into something else. Resolve. He had faced death too many times already. If this was the end, he would not let it be a silent one. He looked at Lyra, her eyes glowing faintly in the night. For the first time, she wasn't just an alien, or an exile, or a burden. She was his partner in survival. The first hunter's voice rang out across the snow, sharp and commanding. Then silence followed, heavy, waiting. Daniel gripped his knife tighter, whispering to Lyra, "Whatever happens, we face it together." Her lips curved slightly, fierce and proud. Together, then. The snow shifted as the hunters drew closer, ready to strike. The frozen wasteland held its breath, waiting for blood. And in that moment, Daniel knew the choice he had made was final. There was no turning back. Protecting her meant war, not just with the cold, but with her entire people. And still, he did not waver. Snow crunched louder now, the sound of many feet pressing into the frozen ground. Daniel's grip on his knife was tight, his breath heavy in the freezing air. The hunters came closer, their glowing armor shining faintly in the mist, their spears glinting like fangs. Lyra stood beside him, her body trembling from weakness, yet her eyes sharp with defiance. She had no strength left to waste, but she did not show fear. The first hunter's voice rang out in a tongue Daniel couldn't understand, but the tone was clear. It was a command. More figures appeared, circling slowly, cutting off escape. There were at least 6 of them. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Fighting beasts was one thing, but facing trained warriors with nothing but a blade seemed hopeless. Still, he stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her with his body. The hunter spoke again, this time in broken human language. "Step away, human. She is exile. She is ours. Move, and you live." Daniel's jaw clenched. Every part of him wanted to believe it, wanted to let go to save himself. But he remembered her voice in the storm, her desperate order to share warmth, the fire in her eyes when she fought beside him, the scars her own people carved into her. He couldn't hand her over. He shook his head firmly. "No. If you want her, you'll go through me." The hunters exchanged looks, then laughed. Their laughter was cold, cruel, like ice cracking over deep water. One stepped forward, raising his spear. Daniel braced himself. His heart hammered, but he kept his ground. Before the spear could strike, a glow lit the snow. Lyra stepped forward, her body weak, yet silver light pulsed through her skin. Her hands shook, but she raised them anyway. "I will not go back," she hissed in her own language, her voice filled with anger. "I will not die by your command." The hunters froze for a moment, then roared in fury. "Corruption!" one shouted, pointing at her. "Kill her! Kill them both!" They charged. Daniel's body moved before his mind did. He dodged the first spear, slashing with his knife, cutting into the hunter's arm. Blood sprayed and the warrior stumbled back with a shout. Another came from the side, swinging a blade. Daniel blocked with his forearm, pain slicing through his skin, but he kicked hard, sending the hunter crashing into the snow. Lyra cried out, unleashing her power again. Silver fire burst from her hands, hitting 2 hunters at once. They screamed as their armor burned, collapsing in the snow. But the effort was too much for her. She staggered, nearly falling. Daniel caught her with one arm, then shoved her behind him. "Stay up, I need you." The last 3 hunters pressed in, their spears stabbing with precision. Daniel fought wildly, his knife flashing, his muscles burning. He blocked one strike, then drove his blade into another's chest. The hunter fell, choking, but a spear tip grazed Daniel's side, cutting deep. Blood spilled hot against the freezing air. He stumbled, pain flaring, but he didn't fall. He forced himself to keep standing, his teeth gritted in rage. He looked at the last 2 hunters and raised his knife again. "Come on, then," he growled. But before they could strike, Lyra screamed. Her power erupted brighter than ever before, silver light exploding from her body in a wave. It knocked the hunters off their feet, throwing them back across the snow. The ground cracked, steam rising from the ice as the energy tore through it. When the light faded, silence fell again. The hunters lay scattered, some dead, others unconscious. The air smelled of burned metal and blood. Daniel dropped to one knee, clutching his side, his breath ragged. Lyra fell beside him, her body shaking violently. Her eyes glowed faintly, then dimmed. "I cannot hold it much longer," she whispered. Daniel put his arm around her, pulling her close. "You did enough. We're alive. That's what matters." Her lips trembled, but she nodded slightly. Alive, together. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something softer there, something more than anger and pride. It was trust, fragile but real. The wasteland stretched before them, endless and cold, but they had survived the hunters. For now, the silence felt almost safe. Daniel pressed his forehead lightly against hers, both of them breathing hard. "They'll come again," he whispered. "Your people won't stop. I know, she said, her voice faint, but I will not run alone anymore. He held her tighter, despite the blood soaking his clothes. Then we faced them together. Snowflakes drifted quietly from the sky, landing on their skin, melting from the heat of their bodies. Around them lay the ruins of battle, but between them burned something stronger than the cold, something unspoken, but undeniable. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering as if to herself, I trusted no one, not even myself. But you did not leave me. Daniel smiled weakly, brushing a strand of her frozen hair from her face. And I never will. The wasteland was still merciless, their enemies still countless, but in that frozen silence, two broken souls had found something worth fighting for. Not just survival, but each other. And as they leaned together in the snow, surrounded by death yet alive, Daniel realized the truth. She wasn't just an exile. She wasn't just a secret. She was his reason to keep walking, no matter how endless the ice ahead.